everybody, today we're specifically going to focus on the 491 visa in Victoria. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Traci Chen and I'm an immigration lawyer based in Australia. I am the principal lawyer at Mason Chen Law Group. I'll drop a link below with all our contacts so you can get in touch with me or one of our lawyers if you need migration assistance to Australia. Now, the 491 visa is a temporary visa in Australia. However, it does lead to permanent residency. So I know a lot of people are looking to apply for the 190 visa or the 189 visa, especially as we all know the 190 and 189 visa, it is permanent residency, so it's gonna be a little bit more competitive. So the 491 visa, once you are nominated, you apply for the visa and then you'll get granted the visa. The conditions are that you must live and work in regional Australia for the next up to 5 years. But if you continue to do so from the date of grant for at least 3 years, make a minimum of around $54,000 per annum, continue to live and work in regional, you will be eligible for the 191, which is the permanent resident visa. So it's not too bad of an option in my opinion, especially for those who have a super competitive occupation or maybe just can't score high enough points or maybe not working in their nominated occupation. It's usually a lot harder to be, invited directly for permanent residency in Australia. So today I'm just going to focus on getting the 491 visa in Victoria. Now they've already started inviting this financial year. We've actually had a lot of people invited already. So I'm going to talk a little bit about their experiences, what they do, what the requirements are, and how you can be nominated for this visa. So first of all, the 491 visa is a general skilled migration application. So it is points based. And you'll need to lodge an expression of interest. The expression of interest is something you lodge through Skill Select. Now, there's a lot of things that you need to lodge that EOI, but rule of thumb, for yourself, if you're lodging for yourself individually, you'll need a skills assessment in an eligible occupation on the nominated occupation list. I'll leave a link below of the occupation list. Second of all, you'll need to meet the minimum English requirements. Now, the minimum English requirements is competent English. So that would be equivalent to 6 in each band for IELTS. But as you know, this visa type 491 is points based. So it is important that you score the highest points that you can. Now, I know a lot of people who are looking to migrate to Australia have either studied in Australia or are working overseas and want to migrate and have decent English. So if you do need to aim for the highest possible English. So proficient English, which is 7 in each band and will equate to giving you 10 points extra on your EOI point score, and then superior English, which will give you 20 extra points. I think it's super important to try and always get as high points as you can. Once you have that, you can lodge your expression of interest. Now, today, remember, we're specifically talking about Victoria itself. So these are requirements just for Victoria. If you want to apply to other states, different requirements, I'll have different videos for that as well. Then you'll need to lodge a registration of interest to be invited for the 491 visa in Victoria. Now, Victoria has some really specific requirements that you'll need to meet to lodge your registration of interest. Now, do remember that it is currently open to onshore and offshore applicants. The requirements of both pathways are slightly different, kind of the same, but slightly different, and I'll go through them both today. And just to mention quickly, this is not to be confused with the 190 nomination requirements for Victoria. There's also a different set of rules for them. So this one's strictly 491. So to be eligible for the 491 visa as an onshore applicant in Australia, you must be currently living and working in regional Victoria. Now, how regional these places look? Regional Victoria is not too bad. There's like Geelong, there's Ballarat, there's Bendigo. These are the obvious bigger cities. Then there's I think Pakenham and even Wallet. Those areas very far up north are even considered regional. So there's actually a lot of options. I know a lot of people ask about the Mornington Peninsula down that way. I'm pretty sure that area isn't considered regional. So do remember that. So you must be living and working in regional Victoria. Now, whatever your nominated occupation is, it's obviously best if you're working in your nominated occupation. So far, all of our applicants that we've lodged at the beginning, and they've also been invited, are ones that are working in their nominated occupation. However, the requirement says that you don't need to be working in your nominated occupation to be eligible. So you have to have a skills assessment in an eligible occupation. So for example, let's just take accountant, for example. Your skills assessment is an accountant. Now, you must be living and working in regional Victoria in any job that is a skill level 1, 2, or 3 on the ANSCO requirement. Now, there is a lot on there, but just to name a few, just for example, you could be an accountant, that's your skills assessment in your expression of interest, but you could be working as a cook or a chef in regional Victoria. Let's just say a restaurant in Geelong. That would mean that you're eligible to apply to be nominated for this 491 visa in Victoria because you're working in a skill level 2 job. I think chef and cook is skill level 2 from memory. Another example is if you have a skills assessment as a mechanical engineer, but you're actually working as a carpenter. Now again, because carpenter is a skill level job in ANSCO, you would be eligible to apply to be nominated for the 491 visa. But I do think it's best if you are working in your nominated occupation. So for example, if you have studied commercial cookery, diploma, and you have a skills assessment as a chef, then you're working as a chef, very high chances of being invited. It actually says in the requirements that chefs and people in hospitality will be prioritized for the 491 visa. So another example is if you did a diploma of hospitality management and you qualify for a skills assessment as a cafe manager, and then you relocate to regional Victoria and start working as a cafe manager, you'd be eligible to apply to be invited for the 491 visa. And a lot of people have said that, oh, for the 190 visa in Victoria, you don't have to be working. If you're not working in a skill level 1, 2, or 3 job, you just can't claim the salary earnings. And yes, that's true. But for the 491 visa, you must be working a skill level 1, 2, or 3 job. If you're not working in a skill level 1 to 3 job, you're not eligible. You can't apply like the 190. The 190 is weird, so you can still apply even if you're not working a skill level 1, 2, or 3 job. You just can't claim your salary in the ROI salary calculator thing. But for the 491, I have an email from them specifically saying that if you're gonna apply, you definitely have to be working. So that's really strange. I'll explain in another video for the 190 how that all works. But again, let's not confuse ourselves and just stick to the 491 today. So obviously they're gonna prioritize certain occupations. So that's your healthcare occupations, that's your engineering, your STEM occupations, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, definitely teachers as well. And also chefs, cooks, and hospitality managers will definitely be prioritized under the 491 visa. So you would have lodged your expression of interest, then you would have lodged your registration of interest. Make sure the details are correct. They've made it very clear this year that it has to be up to date and accurate at the time that you are invited. So make sure you do update it. And I know it's hard because you'll lodge it. Although Victoria is actually acting very quickly now, like we lodge and sometimes we get invitations in like a day or 2. But let's just say, for example, you lodge it and then you know, get on with your life, and 5 months later you change jobs and you forget to update your EOI ROI. I don't know what would happen if that was to happen to you. You didn't update it and it was incorrect. Will you get rejected, or can you change it? I don't know. But best to make sure that you, every time something changes in your circumstances, you go in, you update your EOI and your ROI. Your ROI you can't update, but you can withdraw it and relodge it if you do have new information. But don't go and withdraw it if you haven't been selected. I think a lot of people were getting paranoid and doing that last year. I don't think you need to do it. I just think just keep it there. Now, if you change companies and you know it's a completely different situation, yeah, 100% withdraw it and then lodge it. I was just looking at the Victoria website and there's looking at examples of what regional locations are, and it's got Geelong and Pakenham, which is the ones I mentioned. But they also said that Mornington is, but I remember checking the postcode list and it isn't. I'll clarify later on in the description of this video. I'll run a check, but I'm sure I've checked this before and it didn't come under regional, but I'm not sure at this point because it says on the website. But anyway, let's see. I'll check the actual immigration regional postcode list. Anyway, so what will happen is you will lodge your registration of interest. Now, if all goes well and you have good points and all that, you could get invited in as quickly as 1 or 2 days, you know? Sometimes a couple weeks, maybe sometimes a couple months. Look, the program's already opened, but we've had a lot of invitations. Very weird, like some people lodged like, and then 1 hour later or like 1 day later they were invited, so you never know. Now there's over 3,500 spots for this. I can't remember how many exactly, but just like last year, everybody saw, wow, there's so much more spots for the 190. Therefore, we should launch a 190 rather than 491, because I think there was only 500 spots for the 491 last year and 3,500 spots for the 190. But what ended up happening was that everyone started applying for the 190. So then the 491 just became not competitive. So a lot of my clients who I kind of knew their profile wasn't like ideal for 190, because again, it's one thing to apply, but it's another thing to get selected, right? You have to be strategic in this. You have to look at things and be like, all right, I want this, but what is actually more realistic? Do I just want to wait for the 190 and 189? Or am I happy to just get on the 491 and continue working and just move on with my life, rather than waiting for the 190, not getting selected, having to go back on a student visa and starting all over again? That's the way that I justify a lot of it, you know, to our clients essentially. So I think 491 is not as competitive as a 190. I think the 190 is going to be super, super competitive. So again, your visa is about to expire and you think that, you know, you don't mind the 491 and you live and work in regional Victoria to be eligible, just go for it. It might end up saving you more in the long run, because there's a lot of people who go from student visa to 485, then back on a student visa. For my clients, I make sure that we don't ever go down that, that third pathway there. We just go 1, 2, that's it, onto a permanent resident pathway essentially. So what will happen is once your registration of interest is selected, you will get an email, and then you'll need to lodge your state nomination application. That state nomination application will just have all the details to verify everything. You'll need at least 4 weeks of pay slips. Now there's nothing on here that says you need to be working in regional Victoria for like 3 months or 6 months before you can apply. It just says you can apply. But if you look at the documents, it says you need to provide at least 4 weeks of the recent pay slips. I think that means that you should have at least 4 weeks ready. So if you just started the job, I would probably wait 4 weeks until you lodge. Because what if you're invited, like our clients have, they get invited like a day later and you can't produce those documents. And then they refuse your nomination on that basis, and that's more headache essentially. And then what will happen is you'll lodge your nomination, then you'll wait for the invitation, and you'll get an invitation, like a formal invitation from Victoria, and then a formal invitation from Skill Select. You'll be able to lodge your 491 visa. Obviously, everything that you've claimed in the expression of interest, you need to make sure that you can verify all of that with evidence. Now, a lot of people kind of like, this is hard, this is so easy. I get what you're saying, but it can be really hard because there's so many factors that you don't think about. I had a client who lodged it and then came to us at the stage of nomination. So he lodged his own expression of interest and all of that, got nominated and just needed us to lodge the visa application. So just the last stage. And then when we ran checks on everything, obviously we're gonna check everything before we lodge it. Then when we ran checks on all the evidence, he claimed, I think 3 years of work experience. So he was a qualified mechanical engineer in overseas, and then he came to Australia and he did a master's of mechanical engineering. So in purpose of migration, any work experience after the bachelor is eligible. And he was working as a mechanical engineer while doing his master's and then applying for, skilled visa. We found that while he was on his student visa, even though to claim work experience, you have to be working 20 hours per week, which you can, he actually was working more. Now I know for student visas now you can work more than 20 hours per week, but this was back in like end of 2019 while he just started his master's. He was working over 20 hours per week. And so we advised him, I said, this is gonna be an issue. Because one, if they pick it up, you're gonna get a visa refusal. So what do you wanna do? So I know it seems really easy that I've worked 20 hours and claim this and claim that. But when you look deeply into it, and again, this doesn't happen to everybody, but it can happen. This is how visa refusals happen. I've seen this previously for another situation where they did it, lodged it, and it got approved at the visa stage. All done, held his PR. And then later on, when he applied for his citizenship, they came back with a notice of intention to cancel, saying that when he applied for the permanent residency, he had breached his student visa condition, or there was a false document, something like that, I can't remember. And so even though it all gets, it's all okay here, it can still get cancelled at the citizenship stage. So very interesting. Anyway, I won't blabber on about that. So back to the 491 visa. Once you've lodged it, you'll do your medical check, you'll do your police checks. The processing time for 491s right now can be anywhere between, 2 months, 7 months, 12 months. I think that's the longest we've been waiting for onshore. So it's not too bad. It's okay, it's manageable. Then after that, you'll get your 491 visa grant. The 491 visa grant will have the conditions on there, so do read it carefully. But as an overall summary, you will need to continue to work and live in regional Australia. Now, when you did get your 491 nomination in Victoria, you did sign a nomination declaration thing to say that you're gonna live in Victoria for at least 2 years or something like that. Look, I do highly recommend you to stay, but if you do get an awesome opportunity elsewhere, the idea is that you can move. I don't know what the states are gonna do later on if they're finding out that everybody's moving, if they're gonna reinforce things, but the idea is the 491s, you can move to live and work in anywhere in regional Australia. So if you got granted in Victoria, you stay there for say a year, and then you got an awesome opportunity to work in, Wollongong or New South Wales, which is still a regional area, you can definitely go, it's fine. So anyway, that's just the way I advise my clients now. So lots of states have actually opened up. In my next few videos, I want to talk about South Australia, I will talk about Queensland and WA, and then New South Wales and what I think of that. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with people who need it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya!